So, episode 13 of part 4 of JoJo showed us that even though Joseph is now a lot older, he is still the same Joseph that we all love, because this episode, it really gave him like a chance to shine, and we see that at the end that he said that he wanted to look cool in front of Josuke, and that right there was like definitely accomplished because he was definitely our hero this week. And so the episode itself, it starts off where we have this radio station. Like once again, we see that the radio station, they got this letter from some boy who was troubled because apparently he has not heard from his girlfriend in a few days, and so right now he was thinking that maybe that she was mad that he proposed to her out of nowhere, and so that right there might seem kind of random, but at the same time, like in JoJo, they really never do anything that's pointless. So there definitely must be some reason why, once again, we got another installment of the radio station. So that right there is like one thing I wanted to point out. And so right now, I feel that we should all keep an eye out for this missing girl, because she might play some kind of role like down the line. But then we go to our main cast, and we see that everyone was like gathered at this cafe, and we see that Jotaro, he now has the bow and arrow, and we learn now that what's the name, Akira, he was like going around committing all these crimes, and we see now that all the stuff he stole, it was worth 500 million yen. So this guy definitely knew what he was doing. And so right now we get the scene of him in jail, and we have Jotaro, telling him that if he tries something again, he will chase him down to the ends of the earth and kill him. And we see Akira, look like he about to piss his pants, and he was saying how he was like safer in jail. And so right now, there was something that Jotaro said that kind of like threw me off a little bit, because he was saying that Red Hot was like now destroyed, and so he was making it seem that Akira was like no longer a stand user, like he could like no longer use it. But at the same time, I'm pretty sure like they have lights in prison and they have phones as well, so there was definitely some ways he could like come back, and if not, get even stronger. But at the same time, he is so scared of our cast now. Jotaro was like, even if he does break out, he was like pretty sure he would not try anything. And so right now we see that he was like going to turn over the bow and arrow to the Speedwagon Foundation, so that way they can be analyzed, because obviously that right there would if they can't figure out stuff about it, we can like learn the location of origin, and of course we can learn more about stands. And so I do wonder who in the world was the first stand user, because obviously there had to be some around before, like a character of JoJo, actually got it. So I do wonder, who in the world was the first one, or who were the first ones, because I'm pretty sure there was just more than one back then from where they came from. So that right there would be interesting if we could learn about that. And so right now we see that Joseph, he was like in his own world, like minding his own business and enjoying this coffee to the point where he wanted another cup. But we see him now like knocking over his cup, and luckily Josuke actually caught it. And so right now apparently these two were like going to go somewhere, and we see now that Koichi, he was like definitely happy, to see Joseph and Josuke spending time together, but at the same time he was like kind of worried about him. And then we have Okuyasu, who was stuffing his face with cake, and to me that right there was like kind of funny, because this guy was like so oblivious to everything was like going on, because he was like getting wrapped in his sweets. And so now we see, or we go to Josuke's mom, and we see her home cleaning, and we see now that Josuke actually called her because he wanted to make sure she'll be home all day, because he was like going to let Joseph get close enough to the home so that way he could see her, because obviously if she learns that he's only here to visit and not stay there or to like be with her, that right there will crush her. And like at the same time, it is kind of crazy to see like the age difference between them, because Josuke's mom, she looks insanely young. She could pass for someone like almost 30 in my book. And like at the same time, even though Joseph is now kind of like old, I wouldn't say he's weak. So at the same time, like their age difference, it seems a lot bigger than it is. But I don't believe they have stated just how old Josuke's mom is. But I do believe she's young because I believe that her and Joseph actually like hooked up while she was like in college or something like that. But moving on now, we see that we learn actually that Josuke really does not know how to feel about his father because he was like making sure that he knew the rules when it came to like seeing his mother, and not to mention he was like gonna call him like Mr. Joestar, not Dad or Pops. And so to me, that right there was like definitely building a pretty huge wall between them. And we see now that while they were waiting at the bus stop, Joseph actually got on the wrong bus because that right there was like one of the long distance ones. So this guy was like going to be taken very far away if Josuke, did not catch him in time, because luckily he did, and he caught him before the bus had hit the freeway. And so now we see that while like Josuke was recovering, because obviously he was like so tired, and not to mention he was now getting these stomach pains. We saw something pulling on Joseph's pants leg, and not to mention we saw like these handprints like in like the dirt. And so now we have Joseph like freaking out because obviously there's like something going on. Like this right here is definitely the work of a stand user, but at the same time they can't see one. And like not to mention Josuke here was like not really believing him because he was thinking that Joseph here had like finally fell off his walker and was like going crazy. And so right now we see like this rabbit looking dog because it had these red eyes. We saw his teeth, like we could see like the jaw forming in his mouth. This dog was looking very vicious, and we saw it looking at something that we couldn't see. But luckily Joseph here acting fast, we saw Herman Purple, and we see him now saving his baby, and that right there was like freaking great. Even though he is older now, he can still use a stand like this. And so we see now that when he saved the baby, it was now crying. So obviously, Josuke, he was like finally hearing it, but he could not see it, and that's when Joseph had told him that this right here was a baby. And so right now, from the way he was holding it, he was learning about it. And so right now, that when he told Josuke that he figured out that it was a girl, like next thing we see is Joseph running away, holding the baby, and we see Josuke, run after him with his cane. And so to me, that right there was hilarious. But at least now they knew. But unfortunately, things right here took a turn for the worse because we saw that the baby actually went a number 2 on Joseph's hand, and not to mention he actually touched his beard with it. And so right now you could imagine how disgusting that might be. And so right now what they needed to do was to get some clothes, some diapers, and some milk for the baby, because obviously they can't find the mother, and obviously they can't just leave it. So they had no choice but to take care of it. And we see them now that when they were like walking into the city, we get like some random scene of some guy handing someone their manuscript, like they're a writer or something. And so right now, like I said early on, nothing in JoJo is pointless. So that right there is like either a hint or a preview of something that will go down later on, in the show. And so right now that when they went, so right now we have Joseph and Josuke. They were now in front of the store, and we see now how Josuke could not go in there and buy the diapers because that right there might make these nasty rumors about him. And so right now he was like sending Joseph in there, but he only had like the traveler checks, and so obviously that right there would not work. Or I'm not sure why it wouldn't work, because I'm pretty sure that he could have wrote a check or something, and they could have got that converted into yen. But whatever we have Josuke here giving him his card, and that right there will allow Joseph to like use his savings. But at the same time, we have Josuke warning him, like not to buy anything too expensive because he had worked really hard for that, and of course he not have that much money. And so we see now that when he went into the store, we have this worker, like asking me if he needed help or if they were here was the first time being here. And so right now where we have Joseph telling him that he needed diapers, this guy actually thought that it was for him, but it was for baby instead. And so right now we have this guy feeling pretty embarrassed, but at the same time we have this guy kind of like hustling like Joseph, because you can obviously tell like Joseph had no idea what to buy, but at the same time this guy was just like naming all these like different kind of products, like different sizes, like for a baby, all this. And not to mention when it came to like not to mention when it came to like bottles and the nipples for it, and not to mention the clothes as well, pretty much making him buy everything, because there is no way he could tell what exactly to buy, because he could not give the exact details or measurements of the baby because it was invisible. And so right now he pretty much bought everything he could for a baby girl. And so we see now that when he finally came out, I was like kind of shocked that Josuke did not react right there, because this was like just so much stuff. And so we see now that when they finally like went to this park to actually dress the baby, it had clothes on, but we still couldn't see his body. And but luckily for us, Joseph here actually thought ahead and he bought some makeup to like use on the baby. And we see now that we saw his features, and we even see him put lipstick on it. And that right there might have been a little too much, but regardless, now at least he not putting makeup on the eyes, which is why they like gave her glasses. And so right now we see that while Joseph was like holding her, we see that her powers were like actually growing, because she had made his hands invisible. And we see now that because of that, they were like freaking out. Josuke here was like telling him, to put the baby down. And when he did, she made like over half her little stroller invisible as well. And so right now, because of that, like they were like freaking out even more, because they had no idea what to do, because this right here was because of her stress rising, because obviously they have no idea where her mother is. And not to mention, she does not really know them that well. And they're like handing her like this and doing all this stuff. And we see now that some random pedestrian was like riding on a bike. And we see him now mentioning like this stroller as junk. And this guy had the nerve, even though this right here was like not his trash, he had the nerve to actually flick his cigarette butt at the shoulder. And so right now Joseph here was the only one who caught that. And we see him now like diving to catch it. And but when he did that, he actually hit the shoulder forward a bit, and that right there like made it rolling. And so right now Josuke was like freaking out, getting like pissed off, and we see him now chasing it. But at the same time, like we see her powers would like grow even more, because whenever she would like pass a tree, part of it would turn invisible, and not to mention like the ground as well. Oh, and we also learned that her stand range right now, I believe they said it was like 30 centimeters, but regardless, eventually she had hit a tree, and we see her now going into like this riverbed, and not to mention now like they couldn't see her. And so right now Josuke here, he was like reaching his boiling point. Like we see him, like kind of like keeping his cool, but when it came to Joseph like speaking, that's where he lost it, because he had told him to like shut up and stay out of it. And so right now in his head, he was thinking, someone like this, his father, there is no way he can actually, respect someone like that. And we see him now like jumping in the water, trying to like search for the baby, but obviously he couldn't find it. And then we have Joseph getting in there, and we see him now doing something extremely dangerous. He actually cut his wrist, because that right there would add color, his blood would add color to the water, because obviously it was clear, so there's no way they could see the baby without adding some color to it. And so right now it was like in the center, and we saw like this bubble over a stand, form until eventually burst. And then we have Josuke using Crazy Diamond to actually lift the baby up. And I gotta say, like the OST for this scene, it was fucking beautiful. Like that right there, like to me that was perfect. But at the same time, like seeing the way Josuke was like raising the baby, it reminded me of like Lion King or the series, known as Roots. Like that right there was what was like brought to me, like while watching this scene. But we see now that after doing something so dangerous, Joseph was like, he had wanted to look cool, in front of Josuke. And we see now that Josuke, like, we saw his eyes get like a little teary, but obviously he didn't cry. But we saw him like smiling as well. So that right there was like a major hit to the wall that was like building between them. But at the same time, I'm pretty sure it still will be like kind of awkward between them. But we see now that when everything was like fine over with, we see that that Josuke was like getting ready to like take a shower or something, and we saw like the trademark of the Joestars, which was that star birthmark, like on his body. And so we see that when he saw that receipt, and that right there was like over 100,000 yen, this guy was like furious. But at the same time, it was like way more comical this time compared to earlier on. And so right now at the end, we see that Joseph still had the baby, and we saw him playing with it, like by Jotaro. And pretty much that right there is what the episode ended. And so to me, like I said, to me, this episode, it was so damn good. Like, I definitely liked the way it was structured. And of course, the pacing, it was definitely, to me, it was slower compared to the action-packed ones that we had so far. But at the same time, it was still pretty good. And so we see now that the title for next week is called "Let's Go to the Manga Artist's House," and so I'm pretty sure that right there also plays like some tie-ins to what we saw go down earlier. Excuse me, but pretty much like that was it. And so yeah, let me know what you guys thought. Don't forget to like and subscribe because it really helps me out. And as always, you gotta take it easy. I will see you all next week.